Hello there friends, it's Cassie. Welcome back for another Trinity Stamps video. Today we are going to be playing with the stained glass lily stamp set. This is such a beautiful stamp set and I'm going to share some paper piecing ideas with you about this set to make it really pop. So to start, I've pulled out the big stamp and we're going to put this in my MISTI and stamp this onto some Express It blending cardstock. I'm going to ink this up with some Blackout ink by Ink on 3. And I've got this in the MISTI because I want to make sure I stamp it really well. And I'm going to stamp it twice, so we'll stamp it again here to make sure that I've gotten all the lines. And then I'm going to flip that paper and we are going to stamp it again because, as I said, we're going to do some paper piecing. So I need 2 of these to make sure that I have all the elements for some paper piecing. So we'll stamp this again, and I'll have to, of course, stamp it one more time after that. But then we're going to pull right into our coloring. Now, I did heat set this because the Blackout ink has a tendency to smear a little bit, I guess, if you don't heat set it, and especially if you stamp it more than once, you're going to want to do that. I don't think I heat set it long enough, but I feel like it kind of goes along with the stained glass, so I'm not as concerned about it. So see, I'm going to heat set this again just to make sure, but again, I probably should have heat set it just a little bit longer. All right, so the first one, as you saw, I went ahead and colored that first color. This next one, you'll see I'm coloring completely out of the lines, but I'm okay with this because we're gonna cut this out right on the line. But I'm trying to avoid the inside line, but the outside line, I'm totally okay with just getting all over that. So I've brought in a second color, and I don't do it for that first one. The reason I don't do it for the first one is because I just need that color down. You're not really gonna see that. That's gonna get covered. All right, and then on this first one again, I'm going to bring in some of this blue-green color to color our stems. I screw up a little bit on the stems, and by screwing that up, I mean I color some of the wrong pieces. I thought that they were leaves, and they really, in reality, are still part of the flower. But, you know, you interpret it how you want to. This is going to get covered, so I'm not really that worried about it. I thought, like I said, I thought these were leaves. And I am staying in the line here on this one, because this is going to be our main image. That other one that I've colored outside of the line, that is not our main image. That is the one we're going to be cutting pieces off of. So I've colored those in, and I'm going to bring in a second blue-green color to add down a little bit of shadowing and shading. And then I am going to come back in with that first blue-green color that I used, and we will blend that out. Pay no attention to the ones that are actually still parts of the petals, because that will get covered. But I'll just think about it as practice. Just practice for coloring. And then I'm not going to color the stems on the other one. We are going to use this light blue color for our background, and I'm not concerned about going over the tops of those flowers, and that does smear some of that ink, but I'm not worried about that either because that's going to get covered with the other paper pieced image, and it'll make more sense as we really get into the cutting. But like I said, you want to have 2 stamped out images so that you can make one your main and then your other the one that you cut out of. So I've put down that light blue. I'm going to bring in a darker blue, and then I'm going to just do that on the outside of our piece, and I will blend that color in so that I don't have a harsh line. And it isn't going to look like much right now, not until we start really doing that paper piecing. So I'm done with that, and then we're going to move on to coloring our flowers. Now, once again, I just need the flowers, so I'm going to color all just willy-nilly wonky all over it. Don't care if it's outside of the line. Just want to make sure I don't go over my yellow line because I have to cut that one out too. And I'm adding a darker blue-violet, and then we'll come back in with that lighter blue-violet, and we will blend a little bit. And I'm using some of that darker blue-violet and some of the underneath of the flowers, just adding in some of that darkness where I think that would look good. But like I said, blending that out. And then once this is done, we can actually start doing our cutting. So we are going to die cut out this piece because this is our main image. And the stamp set has the separate die cuts that will cut out the oval and the words. So on this one is the one I'm going to cut right on the line. Now I know some people are like, oh, fussy cutting, but when you're fussy cutting right on the line, I think that's so much easier than when you are fussy cutting and trying to add a little bit of a white border. That can be where some of the frustration comes in for people who don't really like fussy cutting. And in the beginning, when we first started stamping 20 plus years ago, some of us, this is all we had. We didn't have matching dies for each of the stamp sets that we had. And so if you wanted to add dimension by maybe having your piece cut out, you had to physically cut it out with your scissors. Now, I feel like the industry has gotten so much better with like different scissors that are out there for fussy cutting. And I actually have always enjoyed fussy cutting. Now that I have matching dies, I will, of course, always go to the matching dies. But this is a technique that I have always loved, the cutting right on the line and adding dimension doing this. So I've got my frame cut out, and now I'm going to move on to cutting out my flowers. And the key really here to fussy cutting these flowers out is to keep your scissors where they are and move your paper instead of your scissors. Kind of keep your wrist not necessarily locked, but keep your wrist and your scissors that are in your hand only just cutting and then using your other hand to move your piece as needed. So we're going to cut out each of these flowers, and you'll see here we are just about done with this first one. There are the 3 bigger flowers, and then there are the 2 blooms. So like I said, we'll fussy cut each of those out, just making sure we're on the line. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to share a trick with you on how this doesn't necessarily have to be right on. And you'll find some images are just easier to cut out than others. But here is the trick. So I have this Memento TUXEDO black marker, and I am just going to run this along the edge of each of my fussy cut pieces, and that will cover up that white line, and it'll make it so that even if the line isn't completely perfect, this just covers it. So like that's the trick really. So I'll do that for each of my flowers as well. And we'll go, in all the pieces, just hold it up to the light, hold it sideways, and you can see where there's still some white. But this is the easy way to cover up those mistakes. All right, now that all of that is finished, we can start adhering each of our pieces. For our frame, I am going to use some of the Trinity Stamps foam adhesive strips. So in order to get this to kind of go around the edges, I will peel off the release paper before I attach it down. That way I can manipulate those foam strips a lot easier. And then this would even be a great way or a great card to make for a shaker as well, if you maybe didn't want it to be a sympathy card. But I'm going to make this a sympathy card. So now I've got that on there. I'm going to put this frame down on top of our piece. All right, so it's starting to come together. You can see some of that dimension in there. Miles is going to come in and do a little quality control. And I'm going to use another foam adhesive strip on the back of the bigger bloom. The smaller bloom, I went ahead and decided I was just going to adhere that down with some of our Crafty Gluefriend. So I'll use my pickup stick to put that down. It just was a lot easier than trying to get some foam squares or foam tape on the back of that. So we'll use some foam squares on the back of the rest of these flowers. This one I had to cut, but we'll peel off that release paper and stick that one down. Then we'll go ahead and put some of that foam tape on the back of these last 2 flowers, and we can cover up our mistake where we thought that was a leaf when it's really still the petal of our flower. So I love how that looks. I've always enjoyed this look. I just haven't done it a lot because it's one of those techniques that's a little bit older. And I love it. I'll hold that up and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Isn't that beautiful? It's so fun. All right, now we can assemble our card. So I've got my card base. This measures 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and I'm going to score it at 4 1/4. So this will be an A2 size card. I'm going to bring in the Argyle stitched background die, and we'll die cut that. Take a look at that background. Isn't that neat? Just adds a level of sophistication there. And then we need to bring in our stamp set one more time to stamp out our sentiment. We're going to use the With Sympathy stamp set or stamp from this set. We'll ink that up, and then we'll stamp that down. And I do like how this particular set has a matching die set for it. So I'm going to pull that in, and we'll tack that down and run that through our die cutting machine. And then we'll use our Crafty Gluefriend to attach down our stained glass and also our sentiment. But I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to bring in some Seashore flat back sequins. These are beautiful, and they match that frame that I did really, really well. So I've put that into our tidy tray. I'm using some Crafty Gluefriend along with our pickup stick to attach those down. And then I do have one more little bit I want to do. Now remember, when I colored these, I colored over the stamen, so I've brought in some mustard gold Nuvo crystal drops. I'm just very lightly putting a dot. I'm not even squeezing really, and I'm putting that over the stamen, and that will dry very quickly. But once I'm done with that, that's going to finish off this card for today. And I do love how this turned out, and I hope you do too. If you do, please be sure to hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. As an added feature, I have added a new tab at the very bottom of my description box. It is a Buy Me a Coffee tab. No pressure, but if you want to support me in other ways, you can go down there, click on that, and buy me a coffee. Thank you so much for considering and thinking about it. That all keeps me producing videos, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye, everybody.